Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Building Subtxt. I'm your host, Jim Hull. I love great stories, and I built an application to help make more of them. Today, I want to go over the Relationship Story Throughline and how it's one of the most important things you can add to improve your story. I'll talk about how it is known as the heart of a story and how, regardless of genre, you're going to want to have some kind of relationship in there. But that relationship doesn't always have to be romantic. Based on this comment, it's science fiction, not romance, left on one of my previous videos, I decided it was about time to show 3 science fiction stories, great stories, that have relationship story through lines, but have nothing to do with romance. The relationship story through line is one of the 4 key through lines of a complete story. And the reason why it's so important is because it's a primary way in which we can understand the kind of conflict we go through in our lives, something that's not just about me or just about you, but something that's about us and something that we can grow through in order to better understand how to live our lives. That said, the relationship story through line in narrative theory is not just limited to romantic relationships. It encompasses every significant emotional or psychological connection between 2 characters. So in preparation for this video, I reached out to Muse and asked, what are 3 examples of relationship story through lines that aren't romantic? I'm trying to explain it, and I know I have hundreds and hundreds of examples, but instead of me looking them up, why don't you look it up for me? And Muse came back with, the relationship story through line in narrative theory is not limited to romantic relationships. It encompasses any significant emotional or psychological connection between characters. And here are 3 examples. The first one is probably the one that you're really familiar with, which is the mentorship relationship. So it's a relationship between a mentor and a protege. As in the mentorship between Mr. Miyagi and Daniel in The Karate Kid, their relationship develops around the mentor teaching life lessons through the medium of karate, addressing personal growth, and more importantly, mutual respect. Because a lot of times people confuse the relationship story through line for the relationship from the main character's point of view. It really is something separate from that main character. The second example was from Frozen. So there you have the sibling relationship between the 2 sisters. So yes, Anna has her personal stuff that she's going through, and obviously Elsa's got her whole thing where she's up in that big frozen castle. But between the 2 of them, the heart of that story is their sibling relationship, is their relationship as sisters. And that's that feeling that you get inside. Probably one of the reasons why it was so popular was because that's a relationship that wasn't too well explored in the realm of animation at the time. So seeing that was not only unique, but also really heartfelt. And you could really see how they both cared about each other. And then the last one Muse brought to mind was the friendship between Frodo and Sam in The Lord of the Rings. There's actually probably 6 or 7, 8 or 9 different key relationships throughout the entire epic series. But if you were to really key in on the heart, the real key relationship from beginning to end, that would be the friendship between Frodo and Sam, which goes beyond all of the logistical things of how to get there, how to fight all these different orcs and get past traps and however you're supposed to get there to throw the ring into the fire. That's all objective story plot. The real heart of it was in that friendship between Frodo and Sam. Okay, so to address the question that it's science fiction, not romance, and this was in reference to my 3-body problem video, I thought I would bring up 3 examples of science fiction stories that are complete and showcase that relationship story through line, but it's not a romantic one. So the ones I grabbed were The Endless, which is an independent science fiction film, which you may or may not have seen. It's worth seeing. It's kind of fun. All about time travel and cults and that kind of thing. The second one would be Snowpiercer, the original film. And then third would be a Black Mirror episode from season 4, episode 1, which is the USS Callister, the Star Trek episode. So if I go into the story form for The Endless, you can see the objective story through line is all about escaping the cult. The main character through line is Justin and all his trust issues where he doesn't really trust anybody. Aaron is the obstacle character. That's the one who's a little bit more open and is willing to really investigate what's going on at Camp Arcadia. But then the heart of the story is their sibling relationship because they're both brothers. All the baggage that they had growing up together, all the stuff that they went through, and how that transfers into them trying to get out of this cult. There's a lot of held on to fears. There's a lot of fear and anger and a lot of anxiety that's wrapped up into their relationship that is a nice counter to obviously the more logical, linear anxiety of being trapped in a cult just north of San Diego. But then how can they work through that anxiety as being brothers so that they can grow to really rely on one another? So that's the Endless. The next one would be Snowpiercer. Now, the interesting thing about the next two examples is that they actually have two relationships per story. So the Relationship Story Throughline is a perspective. So it's a look at conflict from what are we dealing with? What are the kind of things that we are dealing with and how can we get through them? So you can hand off what is going on in that relationship story to other relationships within the same story, if that makes sense, so that you can explore the thematic issues that are going on from the point of view of another relationship, and they'll resonate together because they're covering the same ground. In Snowpiercer, Curtis has this whole thing where he's trying to fight his way to the front of the train. And obviously there's a lot of social dynamics between rich and poor and all that stuff. All the poor people in the back of the train, all the rich people in the front, he's got to fight his way to get there. Well, there's two relationships that are the heart of what's going on. The first one would be the mentorship with him and Gilliam, right at the back of the train. And they're going through what it was like to be at the back of the train and recognizing whether or not it's fruitful for them to continue. And that bond between the two of them, it's a mentorship thing, kind of like Karate Kid. That is where the heart of the narrative sits towards the beginning of the story. But then once he gets past Gilliam, he gets to the front and then meets Wilford. And then this is really interesting because if you have the objective story and it's about rich versus poor and that kind of thing, the relationship story through line to balance that out is the relationship between an overlord and their subject, which is a little bit different than the sort of class thing of where we get to sit in the train. It's more about what does it feel like between the two of us, like what is that feeling in our heart between the two of us where this person is the one who's imposing everything, cares very much about him. You know, I've always been there for you and I'm here to take care of you and all that kind of yuckiness that's in there. It's a really neat thing to explore because it balances out the kind of more logistical, let's fight and chop people's heads off as we go to the front of the train. You need that balance in the same way that a protagonist needs an antagonist or a main character needs an obstacle character. You need the more intimate look at conflict between people from that really intimate we perspective to balance out all the conflict between people from an objective they perspective. And then lastly, one of my favorite Black Mirror episodes, I think it won an award for something, was the Star Trek one with Jesse Plemons, where he has this whole like Star Trek thing that he's made up in his mind and all the people that are trapped within it. Well, Nanette is the main character in that. And again, just like Snowpiercer, they're two obstacle characters in two different relationships, but they essentially explore the same thing. The main relationship is her relationship with James, and they have kind of this like partnership that they're kind of like, let's work together so they can get out of there together. But they each have their own idea of what is the best way to escape. And the reason why their relationship grows and why they're actually together is because they both have this sort of shared arrogance as to how to escape. And then that gets transferred when he's not there, he's not fulfilling his role, to the rest of the crew, and then working together as work colleagues. So you have this like transference from partnership to work colleagues. We are stuck in this world. We're stuck in this virtual world. So then to balance out being stuck in a virtual world, you would balance that out with people being stuck in their attitudes, in their mindsets. And you want to look at that because that's a key balance. I can see how being stuck in a virtual world, how it would be nice to escape that so I could go eat and do all the other things I'm supposed to do. But then, okay, so then let's balance that out. And that's where you get the meaning in the story. That's what makes the story more meaningful. And why I say you need to have all four through lines, because you can have really cool ideas in the objective story through line in your plot, all these really great scientific things and like, wow, this is really neat to think about. But if you don't balance that out with the more intimate reason almost like why I shouldn't care about that. I understand functionally what I should be caring about there and how to get through that. But then also, what does that mean for my relationships? All right, so that's it, just for a brief introduction into how relationship story through lines don't always have to be romantic, but how they're a really key part of writing a complete story. So I went over the relationship story through line and how it's there always, and all great stories will be able to find it regardless of genre. And then talked about how it's the heart of the story. Gave 3 examples of relationship story through lines that aren't romantic: Karate Kid, Frozen, the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And then went over 3 specific examples from science fiction genres where the relationship was deeply meaningful to what was going on in the plot. It's because a lot of times in science fiction, you're exploring these really cool ideas, but what's important is to balance that out with how we work when we work together and how we work through our fixed mindsets. Maybe there's a way that we can grow closer together and our relationship can get stronger by working through those different attitudes. Above all, just remember that the relationship story through line is the heart of a story. And if you don't have one in your story, it's likely you have a heartless story. Thank you. And if you have any comments about any of this, please leave a comment down below. Otherwise, I will see you next time.